Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Rausan, Pereira. Well, External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj was on Sunday trolled and abused on Twitter over a controversy involving the issuance of passport to an interfaith couple. Last week, a Passport Seva Kendra official, Vikas Mishra, in Lucknow was transferred after the interfaith couple alleged that he humiliated them when they went to the office with their passport applications. According to the couple, he asked the husband to convert to Hinduism and pulled up the wife for marrying a Muslim. A section of social media attacked Swaraj and the ministry for taking action against Mishra, claiming that he was just doing his duty. The External Affairs Minister is not the only one to face the brunt of Twitterati. Several others, too, in the recent past have been subjected to massive trolling, notable among them being Priyanka Chopra for her series Quantico and Swara Bhaskar for the movie Veere the Wedding. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will take a closer look at the trolling issue on social media and how to deal with it. Joining me on the program today are Rakshit, Tandon, Director, Council of Information Security, and he's also a cyber security consultant. Ira Trivedi, yoga guru and author. Apar Gupta, cyber law expert, and Amitabh Kumar, Head of Media and Communications Center for Social Research, and he's also part of the Safety Advisory Board of Facebook and Twitter. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Ira Trivedi, I'd like to start the program with you. Let's first try and put into perspective, is trolling the new fad, really?
It really is. And I also want to say that it's very specifically targeted against women. So if you see the ratio of who gets trolled, if it's more men or women, I would say that the ratio is a lot more skewed towards women. Of course, men are getting trolled as well, but I think women are specifically targets. And this is a representative of what is happening in our society. We're seeing a lot of sexual harassment, we're seeing a lot of, we're seeing increasing sexual violence. And so I do think that trolling too is a result of this. So you mentioned Swara Bhaskara right now, and other female actors, actresses, any well-known woman who really comes out. Right now, Hina Khan posted a video doing yoga on International Yoga Day, and she was trolled because they say, oh, how can she be doing yoga? She's a Muslim. So there's a lot of, I would say, women are the main subject, and this is a clear signal of patriarchy. And the second is religion. Whenever there's a religious remark that is made, there's a huge amount of outpouring. So for example, I made a pro-Islamic tweet the other day. I sort of said that the Quran is a very modern, it's very modern, and sometimes Hinduism can be regressive. And I was trolled for days and days and for weeks. There was an outpour of Twitter because they said, how can a Hindu girl say that the Quran is good? So I've personally experienced trolling. Because I've personally experienced it, I know that it can be quite damaging because social media is quite lasting. So if you get trolled, it begins and it's quite never ending. For trolls, this is a very easy process because they simply they're faceless men and maybe women, but I don't think there are that many women trolls. They're faceless men sitting behind computer screens, and all they have to do is type a message.
Sure.
So I do think there's a couple of different factors that play here, but a major one is patriarchy.
Okay, a major one is patriarchy is what you're suggesting. Once it starts, it's never ending and damaging is what Ira Trivedi is suggesting. Let me go across to Rakshit Tandon now. Are women most susceptible to trolling? And also, what's happening on social media, is it a reflection of what's happening in the society?
I agree to Ira, as she said, women had been the subject. As in my personal experience as an expert, when I connect with people, and I'm personally right now working on cybercrime awareness programs for women and children, 60 to 70% of the complaints are from women-based. And rightly said, religion is one. Second is sexual harassment and sextortion, which is on the rise. And yes, I think the society is today in a vomiting mode, and there are no values when it comes to writing anything. Recently, there were two subjects, and they both are again celebrities who were in connect with me where they were badly trolled on Twitter and Facebook, both, with very abusive content, though they reported, and the content was immediately blocked and removed, but it continued. It continued. So the fear of the law is not there, the deterrent is not there. And as per, I work very closely with the cyber law community as well, and I see there are a lot of sections there which can stop this and punish them for putting abusive content. The language is bad. And if you say the reflection of the society, I would agree to that, because I think there's a moral collapse. Because when I look at the complaints coming in from these young women, and when we look at those screenshots and the content which they send, how can somebody write like this? So yes, the Constitution has given me a freedom of speech. They have given me a freedom of expression. They have not given us freedom to abuse or to go to that extent which can cause so much of mental trauma to the subject.
Sure. You know, Apar Gupta, just taking off from what Rakshit Tandon has just said, you know, you can disagree with someone, you can have an argument with someone, but do you need to be nasty and abusive?
So I think being polite or being impolite to anybody in the physical space or being like that online is not within the domain of law, and I'm talking like a lawyer has to govern. And that also goes back to the central problem about trolling. How do we define it? Who is a troll? Who's not a troll? And are all trolls the same? So before starting into this or giving one or two comments on this, firstly, I'd like to apologize as a man to Ira Trivedi, as well as a lot of women out there, minorities, etc., who face trolling. One of the first things I think which is incumbent on all of us online is to spur positive action, is to look at any person and be a good Samaritan, and the minute we witness any kind of abuse being directed is to call it out and to shut it down. The second thing I like to say, how do we define trolling? Trolling, when you pick up the dictionary, it's basically imaginary fairy tale character which is smelly, dark, short, etc., having all those kind of characteristics which is unpleasant. But trolling today has also come to be an umbrella term which means a lot of other things: direct threats, doxing, which is essentially bits of personal information which are taken to threaten a subject, accusing another person of corruption and financial impropriety, bringing so much stress to them, not as a single person itself, but through a coordinated wave of attacks of Twitter followers, Facebook followers. It causes immense mental trauma, damage, and people just shut off and log off sometimes. So are the laws sufficient? A lot of times this is not free expression. These are direct threats. This is direct abuse. And I would say we need to focus much more on the enforcement of the existing provisions of law on these people and take it very, very seriously. This is a cancer which will only spread and it will engulf society completely.
Sure. Let me go across now to Amitabh Kumar. You know, I'm going to go back to a point that Rakshit Tandon was making about how some content was removed and blocked. What is the standard operating procedure as far as social media companies are concerned when someone is being trolled? What is done? What is the process that is followed?
Firstly, echoing the panel here, and Apar put it really beautifully, that being a feminist, I apologize to Ira and all the other women for this sort of behavior. As far as the social media platforms go, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the rest of the bunch, the second a tweet or a Facebook update is reported and it is against the community guidelines, and all this abuse that has been spoken about, most of it falls not in the community guidelines, it is removed. And if the person is repeating such behaviors, if this trolling is happening again and again, then that account is also blocked, and also the IP address is put on monitoring if it has been being used again and again for the same purpose of a targeted abuse. So just like Apar said very correctly, that there is a whole army of people put behind a certain topic, and all the three topics that you mentioned of Sushma Swaraj ji, of Priyanka Chopra ji, of Swara Bhaskar ji, all are directly related to patriarchy, an epidemic which the Me Too movement very clearly showed, and implementation of the law is something which needs to be done in order to curb hate speech, as we call it, online.
And you spoke about community guidelines. What are these community guidelines really, and what do they state?
These community guidelines, I'm sure most of the users have not read it, but I really, really request you to read it. It pretty much marks out any sort of hate, be it against religion, region, sex, gender of a person. You cannot target them, you cannot abuse them, you cannot go after them by, just like Apar told you about, putting out private information without consent. So these are extensively written community guidelines, just like the extensively written laws of this country. Number one is to report. Instead of marking and saying, look how bad this person is, or look what a pathetic language this troll is using, just on the top right hand corner there's a small little arrow, click on that, most bottom is report this tweet or report this post. The second you do that, there are teams of people looking after this content, and this tweet will be removed. And just like Rakshit highlighted earlier, the second people report it, the content is removed, and if the user has really been abusive, then the account is also blocked and removed from the platform.
And since we are here, another quick question from you. How long does it usually take for this process to be completed? Is there something that you follow?
Well, with you, I mean, I don't work for Twitter, I'm just on the safety advisory board.
Right.
But the time taken usually is between an hour to 24 hours. But at an average, I report multiple times in a day. If you go to my timeline, you'll see usually between 3 to 4 hours, quick action is taken.
Okay, all right. Since Amitabh Kumar kept talking about the law, kept saying that, we need to follow the law at the end of the day. Yes. I want to understand from you, are there laws that govern this particular issue, and how, and do we need to rehaul our laws as well so that we can look at this issue with pinpoint accuracy?
So two things here. The first is that Indians may lead to ration for a lot of things, but we have plenty of laws. Okay, that's the first thing. And the second thing is that the Britishers may have given us a working railways, but they did give us a dysfunctional legal system as well, not in substance. Now, when Lord Macaulay made the Indian Penal Code by itself, it had so many provisions because it also drew from Victorian England. So you have this provision, for instance, any words or gestures which may be made to offend the modesty of a woman. Now, don't go by the phrasing. This does require some amount of upheaval, given that women and modesty are two different things, and it's up to a woman how to, define it by itself. And threatening a woman by gestures or words is different from outraging their modesty. Even then, using abusive language, direct threats by itself, disparaging a person online applies equally to a physical conversation, to a letter I send to the crowd, to a newspaper article that is published, to a tweet which is posted, or a Facebook status message which is updated. We also have additional laws under the Information Technology Act for the sake of clarity, and police quite often, when they file their FIRs and then subsequently the charge sheet, mention a laundry list of provisions. The problem again is enforcement, and I think this is something that Rakshit can throw some light on, given that he works very closely with police departments and helps in improving their skills and training.
Talking about the police department, we have KPS Malhotra, additional DCP Cyber Training Division, joining us on the program on the phone line right now. KPS Malhotra, as far as this particular issue is concerned, how does the cyber wing really look at it? How do you deal with it when you get a complaint of trolling online?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm KPS Malhotra, additional DCP Cyber Training Division. Earlier, I've worked with Cyber Cell also for Delhi Police, and as of now, we receive multiple complaints regarding trolling and other Facebook issues or the Twitter issues. So the complaint, when received by the police, it is generally marked to the concerned police station, and from that it goes to the concerned cyber cell of each district. So at present, every district has a cyber cell, and that takes care of such complaints. If the cognizable offence is made out, the offence is registered, the FIR is registered. Whereas in many cases, it happens that the cognizable offence as per IPC or IT Act has not taken place. So in that scenario, the person has to approach the court, or a non-cognizable offence FIR is registered. So once the identity of the person is to be established, the due process is followed. through the social media sites. And then we have registered many cases in which the culprits have been brought to book. And the current scenario, this is a upcoming problem, and police is onto the solution with this.
And as far as the social media platforms, the social media sites are concerned, KPS Malhotra, do you get the kind of cooperation that you need from them while dealing with these issues?
Yes, we do. We do get the cooperation as far as when the FIR is registered. What happens in many offenses, in many of the cases, that the cognizance of the offence, as per IPC or as per the IT Act, is not made out. Somebody is just using the normal trolling somebody on some sort of a message. Then the cognizable offence has not been made out. Then the concerned social media service providers, they resist giving the information.
Sure.
Whereas in case legal FIR is registered, and we have found that in nearly all the cases we got the details from Twitter and from other platforms. Whereas in few of the instances where they feel that the cognizable offence has not made out, then they resist providing us the details.
Okay, so at the end of the day, people actually have to come out and complain. Only then can action be taken. If you keep quiet about it, nothing can be done, is what the panelists are suggesting. Ira Trivedi, that having been said, it's understood over the 15 minutes that we've had this discussion for that trolling is a major problem,
yes,
and it needs to be dealt with at the
Yes, I
earliest.
want to-
How do we deal with the issue really going forward?
Yes. Now let me tell you the problem. What the DCB just said is a very long drawn out process. I've gone through it myself, and by the time you get to making an FIR, first of all, no police station will look at a tweet and even understand it. Most of them will say this, we're not going to file an FIR. And without an FIR, there's not much that can be done. And the thing with social media is it's very current. So if the tweet or the post stays online for 24 hours, the damage has already been done. It's already gone viral, it's already influenced everything. So the issue here is that the police system takes so long. I have given complaints, they have taken 3 weeks to get back to me. And if a tweet is taking 3 weeks to get back, if I've gotten some harassment tweets, then 3 weeks later, then the issue is over. The damage has already been done. The abuse has already been given. Same with online articles. I want to take this conversation a step above. It happens on social media, Facebook. It even happens with online articles, blogs. People will write a very defamatory blog against a woman and post it, and that blog becomes as good as a newspaper article because it's on the internet. Anytime anyone searches her name, that blog will show up. That Facebook post will show up. So it's really, really damaging for a woman's reputation. And that blog will stay up, and the police action takes so long. There needs to be cells where police action is done immediately, where people understand the kind of language which is being used in the tweets. Most of the police officers who are stationed at these stations, they don't even speak English. They don't understand the language, and all trolling is done in English. So they don't understand the defamatory language used, they don't understand the slang which is being used, and they will not file an FIR. I have gone through this. There have been defamatory articles written about me. I have gone to the police station and no one has helped me. I have gone to the cyber cell, submitted a report online, and the website wasn't working. So it took me many days to issue that complaint, and 3 weeks later I got a reply. So the police system does not work. It's not a good system. I have gone through this personally. So while the DCP has given us a lot of remedies, I'm telling you personally that these remedies do not work, because with Twitter, Facebook, social media, and online, the biggest damage is in the first 24 to 48 hours, and that's when things begin going viral. A tweet or a post or a blog, if remedied 3 weeks later, then nothing happens. So these perpetrators who are doing this kind of activity, very strict action needs to be taken against them. Very strict, it needs to be immediate action almost, where websites are blocked. Websites are blocked till the person whose website it is or account it is goes to the court and says, open my website. So it needs to be like,
points taken. Let me take the points that you're making, Ira Trivedi, to the other panelists as well. Rakshit, Tandon, how serious are we about this online trolling problem? Do we take it really seriously? And are we equipped to handle these problems? Are the officials equipped to handle these problems?
So I've been with the training divisions and the law enforcement for now almost 10 years and working hard. And I agree to Ira at some point that yes, there is a gap with the law enforcement, but then things, they're so dynamic. And there is a lot of trainings and cyber cells coming up, but the process we need to smooth line. Like if I'm filing a complaint, it has to, as rightly said, the damage will be done within 24 to 48 hours. And if we go through the process of the law enforcement, that a first complaint is given, and then to get it processed into an FIR is the challenge. And once the FIR is filed, and then it is being connected to the said service providers. So we do find challenges when it comes to service providers who are sitting in US and in India. There is a challenge when we don't get proper response at times. As KPS sir said, yes, we do get response in many cases. So if you even look at the cybercrime cases reported last year in 2015, there were around 11,000 cases reported, and out of which 5,000 arrests were done. Currently, if I look at what is happening, I've been a part of a lot of initiatives where a lot of things are happening for crime against women and children, and we are opening cyber labs and cyber forensic labs. There are training programs going on, there are empowerment programs going on, but a lot need to be done. We need to smoothline the process, and truly said, if the punishment is not given, so they are open. So they just troll. They can even, I've seen in cases, they troll, they abuse, and then they close their IDs themselves. They hide themselves online, and then they create a new ID, and then they again do. So we need a lot of participation, not only from the service providers, but yes, the law enforcement need to gear up.
Okay,
the challenges need to be met out.
I'm going to go to the law enforcement officer in just a bit, but before that, let me go across to Apar, because you know, a couple of points have been made about strict punishment, strict action, as well as what some panelists have spoken about. What does the law state about punishment?
So the law states also a process of determination. So you can't, on the basis of a complaint by itself, establish certain particulars and immediately throw somebody in jail. I do empathize to a great extent that this is a big legal problem, but you know, the glacial pace of the law also is due to the checks and balances in the procedural system. So if you're prejudging the content, and if you're widening penalties by itself, that will flow over to even kinds of political discussion, which are, of course, one area where women, minorities, religious as well as caste minorities are most attacked on. These same laws will be used against them. The second thing is, when we look towards private platforms such as Twitter and Facebook to proactively take down this content, if they do not do it with enough transparency, it can lead to, again, forms of censorship which are secretive, not transparent, and ultimately can result in wide-ranging damage. And we should also be a little much more circumspect about automated AI-based tools which are acontextual as a developing technology to implement them. This is only a note of caution. The content and abuse that we see every day online really riles up the best of us, but we need to moderate our actions within the bounds of Article 19(1)(a), which is our fundamental right to freedom of speech and expression. I recognize the problems, but we need to work within a boundary which respects freedom of speech and expression, and at the same time prevents this abuse, which prevents women, minorities from actually exercising their right itself.
Sure. You know, KPS Malhotra, another point that the other panelists were making about streamlining the entire process itself, the redressal mechanism needs to be made better, and also swift action needs to be taken.
Yes. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, please. You know, we need to streamline the process. The entire process needs to be streamlined.
I agree on that, yes. Being a very, very dynamic act, yes, we need to streamline the process. There's no doubt about it. But the issue here is that at the initial stage, rather than the police agency, the more appropriate action is from the service provider, that in case they immediately react to the request given by the enforcement agencies, law enforcement agencies, and the content is struck down, then it might solve major problems. But in most of the cases, they demand the FIR and other issues beforehand, so that in itself, the streamlining of this process is required, and to some extent, yes, It's in the process only.
Okay, so that's the law at the end of the day, and it is going to be a tedious process because of the issues that Apar Gupta has just raised and spoken about. Yes, Rakshit. Tandon.
So, if it is, as Amitabh also said, community guidelines. So, if the user report the content as per the community guidelines, they immediately take actions. Yes, at times it takes 3 hours to 24 hours to take that action. But in some cases, like if it is a sexual abuse or a nudity or pornography, or it is anti-religious or something, I have seen cases where I myself have reported the content on behalf of the complainant and it has been immediately pulled down. So there is a level of awareness to be given to the users also. We need to empower the users, and yes, the law also needs some changes, and especially to IT Act. As Apar said that yes, we do have so many laws in IPC and also. But I remember there was one law section in IT Act 66A which was removed, and from till date we are waiting for an amendment which could come and cover issues like trolling and bullying and stuff like that, because today under IT Act I only find section 67 which only talks about obscenity.
Sure.
And there is nothing about trolling or bullying or fake news or rumors, which is another parallel issue on social media which is causing, for the last 3 days I have seen 2 or 3 news articles coming in where people were lynched just because of a fake rumor of somebody picking up child or somebody doing organ trafficking, and just because of those fake rumors 4 or 5 people were badly lynched.
Sure. You know, Amitabh Kumar, what are companies like Facebook, Twitter and other social media platforms, you know, working on something in the works maybe to try and better deal with this problem?
Well, there are campaigns going on as of now. Twitter and Center for Social Research are doing this whole initiative called Tweet Surfing, where exactly these community guidelines are explained, where reporting is encouraged. Reporting is supporting is a hashtag. We are trying to reach out to every user possible and tell them to come out with these reports. Similarly, with Facebook, we have done this huge program across universities called Social Surfing, where we are talking about the cause of this trolling, which is cyber etiquette. The fact that you cannot abuse, it is just wrong. Finding solutions outside is something different, but as for the platforms, what I would really like to use this space is that users should come out and talk about it and use that report button. That works very, very quickly. And the harsher the abuse, the quicker those reports are looked into. In cases of where people have also announced that I'm going to commit suicide, it is within minutes that social media platforms reach out to local authorities. But what we need to think and believe is that just because it's the internet, it is not a jungle out there. You cannot do whatever you feel like. You cannot be a criminal, because at the end of the day, the law is going to get you. It's going to take some time, but it will get you. So I would really encourage people not to be silent bystanders, but proactive digital citizens who would report these negative posts. And social media platforms are working very, very hard. Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg, this is their main aim for this year, to ensure the reporting solutions, this time comes down. More people look into it. It becomes better. But we need citizens and users to be more proactive, because at the end of the day, it is us who are creating this content.
Points taken.
It is us who need
Points
to
taken. Let me get one quick closing comment in from Ira Trivedi with the best way forward.
The best way forward is really for the government to tighten up, and really it's only our government that can do their jobs. We can't leave these things onto private operators like Facebook, etc. I know they're doing their bit, but they're worldwide organizations. The government really has to instruct organizations to help them with cyber trolling. It's becoming such a big issue in India. There needs to be very, very strict procedures in place. I told you about my experience that I went through, and I don't want anyone else to go through this kind of experience. So police forces need to be trained. Other panelists said that things are happening, but they need to happen at a much faster rate, because social media is growing at cyber speed and we need to keep up.
Okay, all right. On that note, then, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.